Hey everybody, it's Sunday and we're gonna have breakfast, lunch, brunch, whatever you want to call it, by making a bacon and caramelized onion quiche. And I had some bacon ends and pieces that I got from Misfits Market that were cooked, and a bunch of eggs and some Swiss cheese, and we're gonna take our onions and caramelize them and sweeten them up and flavor them up, and then we're gonna make our quiche. So follow along, let's do it. We're gonna start our caramelized onions with some butter. And I was gonna say a little bit, but it's really not. And as soon as that's bubbly, we're gonna put them in. Okay, time to add in our onions. And because when you caramelize onions, they shrink down to practically nothing. This is a whole onion, and we may or may not use the whole thing, but we can find some other use for these. And because they're in a quiche, and we want to cut our crust into wedges, I didn't want long onion strings, so I decided to dice them instead. And this is gonna take a while. I gotta, caramelized onions gotta go low and slow. It's gonna take about 30 minutes. So before we continue on, we're gonna season them up with some salt and pepper. And I wanna add a little more onioniness with my favorite freeze-dried chives and some color too. And ordinarily when I make quiche, I put nutmeg over the top of the pie before I bake it, but this time I'm going to incorporate the nutmegginess into the caramelized onions. So there we go. We'll see you when we're caramelized. Oh, and by the way, in the meantime, I preheated the oven to 400 degrees and I'm going to par bake our pie crust for just a little while to make sure that the bottom gets cooked all the way through, because sometimes it can be real wet on the bottom. Our onions are nicely caramelized, and now we are going to cool them down and make our quiche. I have lowered the oven temperature to 325, by the way. We have our par-baked pie crust and our nicely caramelized and cooled onions, which, like I said, I don't think we're going to use all these, but maybe. And we use most of it. And now we have our diced up cooked bacon. I don't know if we're gonna need all this either. Okay, our bacon's in, and now we have our cheese. And ordinarily, once the layers are on that are under the cheese, that's when I season with salt and pepper and nutmeg when I make a quiche. But we did that when we cooked the caramelized onions, so we don't need to. And sometimes people call a quiche a cheese pie, so it requires a lot of cheese, which blends up with the custardiness of the eggs and cream, which we are about to put together. My equation for ultimate custardiness for quiche is 1 egg per half cup of cream. I'm using half and half today, but you can use milk, cream, or half and half. So we're gonna start out with 4 eggs, which means we're gonna use 2 cups of cream. Cup number 1. And cup number 2. And now we're gonna whisk these together. Our custard mixture is a nice light yellow with no streaks of dark yellow. So it's very well mixed. And now we're gonna pour it into our shell and bake it up. And I like to work my way around, pour it in slow so it sinks to the bottom. We might have made a little too much quiche mixture. And when it's in the crust, I like to tamp it down just a little bit to make sure everything's nicely covered and evenly distributed. Before we go in the oven, I have loosely placed some foil around the edge of the pie crust so it doesn't get too dark. And that caused some of the stuff to leak out, but that's okay. That's what the parchment's for. And now we're going in. It's probably going to take about an hour at 325. I have just taken our bacon and caramelized onion quiche out of the oven, and it is perfect, golden brown, nicely cooked. And the way to test it for doneness is to give it a little jiggle. And as you can see, there's no jiggle going on there. Everything's firm and well done, and it's going to be great. Can't cut it quite yet because they cut better when they're cool, or even when they're cold. Here's our bacon and caramelized onion quiche. Sunday brunch done, and it came out great, and we're going to be eating it for days. I want to thank you for joining me while I played with my leftovers and made our Sunday brunch quiche. And now we're going to go ahead and take a bite. It's going to be good. So yummy. And we'll see you again soon.